Right, hello everyone. This is us at the Morley Agricultural Foundation over in Norfolk. We are in one of the two fields that we're working on as part of AHDB Strategic Farm East, looking at the management of BYDV. So in these trials, we've been looking at this with Morley since 2023, trying to understand how we can manage the aphid vectors of BYDV in a more sustainable way. That we've approached by the principle of looking at variety selection. So we've got two fields that we looked at last year, two fields we're looking at this year. One has a variety known to be susceptible to BYDV. The other has a variety which has been marketed as being resistant to BYDV. What we're doing then within each field is we're then assessing how the risk of BYDV is building up over the season. So we're doing that by approaching the two different decision support tools. One being AHDB's TSUM, which is publicly available both through AHDB and on the IPM Decisions platform. We're also looking at another decision support system, which is currently under development between ADAS and AHDB. That one doesn't have a name yet, so more information will come as that gets developed further. What the idea is to look at these decision support tools to understand how the aphids are coming into the field and what the level of risk is at the crop. So we can predict when aphids may fly, come to the field, assess what the level of risk is through doing things like putting out yellow sticky traps, or if you're a bit more adventurous and more of an entomologist like myself, you've got with a sweep net and you can survey in a more detailed way for your pests and your natural enemies. The two different support systems that we're looking at work in a slightly different way. One of them, the TSUM, looks at the day degrees and development of aphids. It doesn't predict when to apply any form of intervention, be that an insecticide or other option. The new system that's currently being developed also incorporates information on the farm economics, so the cost of the grain, the cost of the insecticide application, and things like what you expect to get your grain value. It also includes information on the proportion of aphids carrying BYDV in the area. So that's done through molecular testing of aphids sampled across networks across the country. This then allows us to understand what is the risk from the virus itself as well. So the current model, the TSUM, just looks at aphid numbers. The new system will also look at how many are carrying the virus. Because when it comes to BYDV in your crop, aphids alone aren't the biggest problem. It's when they transmit the various viruses. In this case, particularly, we're interested in BYDV. So what we're doing in this field today is we have a couple of our field team out in the field today who are collecting some tissue samples. So this will allow us to screen for BYDV molecularly, whether we can see visual symptoms or not. We're also then going to be flying this field via a drone to then see whether the mapping that our field team from ADAS collect can be married up with footage created by NIAB's drones. So then we can understand which one of our decision support systems or variety is impacting on BYDV symptoms that we see within the field. This will all then get built together towards the end of the season when we will then compare between the different treatment effects, the different crop varieties, and ultimate yield.
So there's a quick review of what we had in the crop for harvest 2024. We had fields, two split fields, where we were looking at different varieties. So each field was an individual variety, one being a variety known to be susceptible to BYDV and one being marketed as resistant to BYDV. So these looked with the two decision support tools in the autumn of 2023 at when the level of risk from aphids would arrive within the crop. During those periods, both decision support tools actually saw low levels of aphid pressure. This was borne out by other data from UK-wide monitoring of aphid populations that the season was a low pressure season for them in terms of aphids and the virus. And what we saw in the field actually was during the critical period of aphid vectoring for BYDV it was quite moist over at Strategic Farm East. So actually the ground conditions was not suitable for a pass with an insecticide in terms of any treatments that we had, but both decision support tools actually recommended that the pressure was so low that it wouldn't have been advisable anyway, unless high levels of aphids were seen in that specific location, of which our trapping within those fields did not see that. So what we did was we carried on both fields to yields. This is where we just really looked at the different varietal selection. So does that variety selection benefit in a low aphid pressure and low virus pressure season. Looking at the two yield maps from each field, there was a little bit of a variation with the resistant variety yielding slightly less. But as these were split fields, it's possible that this variation could be down to the actual field itself rather than the varietal trait. But that difference wasn't huge. So it is plausible that actually varietal resistance or tolerant traits could be utilised and show better benefit to growers in higher pressure seasons. So we're carrying on that again in the season for harvest 2025. So once again, we drilled two fields at Strategic Farm East, one with a resistant variety, one with a susceptible variety. And again, looking at two sin support systems. But what we decided this year, due to the fact we had a weather window and we could get machinery on the ground, we have applied an insecticide treatment in line with when the TSUM model predicted. So these two fields now have been observed by members of staff from ADAS, and they've been flown by drone camera systems from NIAB. And we intend to look at the data from in-field monitoring, both by person and by drone, and look at that later on in the year against what happens on the yield maps and see whether that decision of applying an insecticide in one of our treatments, aligning with the TSUM recommendation, was viable or not. And we will be looking at this at the end of the season, with the main factor that being the end crop yield.